Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Hello there, a very good evening to you. You're watching Vantage Point, and on this edition we have a host of topics we'll be discussing about. Let me give you a hint. We're talking about the triple threat that's coming our way. It's such a tongue twister. A triple threat that's coming our way. And we'll be talking about it with none other than Dr. Vantage here with us in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you.
So the triple threat, the Bond Commission report, the local government elections, and Jerusalem.
Yeah.
The reason why we call it a triple threat is it's a threat to a number of parties. And first up, we'll talk about the Bond Commission report. On the 31st of December, when the dawn of New Year, a lot of things are coming to light. The sun rises on the report.
That's a good one. Right? Good line. Okay, okay.
No one is going to be kept in the dark. And a lot of things are going to come into light, especially of all the recommendations, suggestions, of all the inquiries that have been happening for almost 9 to 10 months. And do you think this is going to be it then?
Well, it'll depend on whether the report has public credibility. I think the public has a general sense of where the buck stops. Now, if the report is recognized by the public as something that's very credible,
right,
then you have a breakthrough. Much depends on A, the report, B, the action that the President takes on the basis of the report and how soon he does so. Now, he's under some pressure because the report comes out on the 31st of December.
Right.
And elections are early in February. So, the action that the President takes will have a knock-on impact on voter behavior, because the voters will either think that the crooks got away or are going to get away, or that they didn't, and that the axe is going to fall on whoever, at whatever level they are.
Right.
Now, if the President takes action and heads roll,
right,
then it will have one kind of effect at the election. But if he doesn't, and it looks like they've just gone for some scapegoats,
right,
but not gone right up the chain of command,
okay,
then you have a problem.
Right, but let's analyze as to what are the ways the report could possibly point fingers at. It's either the central bank governor is at fault, or the one who directed him, who happens to be Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who holds a portfolio of Minister of Economic Affairs, or either the private institutions which were involved in the inquiry are held accountable. But do you think former governor of the central bank, Arjun Mahendran, will be held accountable, keeping in mind that he's not even a citizen of the country? Can you take legal measures against him?
Well, I'm not sure, but I do know that in Singapore, you can be a citizen of another country, but if you break their laws, you wind up in jail. So I really am not knowledgeable enough to say that this is what will happen, but it seems a strange coincidence, Stephanie, that while there were so many highly qualified people who had come up through the central bank, including the present governor, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, that instead somebody without a PhD in economics, but never mind that, somebody who's not a citizen of Sri Lanka was picked and brought in and made the head of the central bank, and then a short while later you see a huge bond scam. Now, I'm not saying he did it, but there are too many loose ends here. I mean, why would, okay, there's a bond scam which is unprecedented in Sri Lankan history and possibly in the contemporary history of the world. Banks have been knocked over, but not the central bank of a country. But just before that, somebody is brought in from out of the country, not like the head of the Bank of England, who's a Canadian citizen, but was vetted by the Parliament.
And also we need to mention, during the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, we found out that even when the bond commission or the transaction had taken place and it was out in the media and we were able to talk about it, and we were the first to talk about it, we realized even after the Prime Minister takes a decision to extend his tenure.
Yeah.
So, meaning he had his back all along.
Yeah, I mean, the PM brought him in. The PM resisted the move to shift him. He tried to hold on for as long as he could when the President tried to move him. And then he appointed him as an advisor. But there's another coincidence. The PM, why did he take the central bank over into his purview, the Prime Minister's? Because that's not where the central bank normally is. So the PM takes the bank over. The PM brings a guy who's not a citizen and puts him there. The guy has a son-in-law. And they live together in the same house. And then the son-in-law is somehow involved in this questionable chain of events.
Right. And they've defied all rules. They've defied almost all suggestions by the cabinet itself. The cabinet didn't know half of what was going on at the central bank, which is unlawful.
So is it all a coincidence?
Well, we will delve deep into this topic after this short commercial break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching Vantage Point, and just before the break we were obviously talking about the Bond Commission and how the report is going to be out on the 31st of this month, and how this will have a ripple effect on the local government elections itself. So February is going to be a big month for both the coalition governments, and we see a lot of defections happening right now, which is normal before any sort of election, any sort of polls here in Sri Lanka especially. But do you think the SLFP has got everything together?
No. The SLFP, the official SLFP is in very deep trouble. The UNP has its vote base.
But we see a lot of defections taking place, which means they are drawing allegiance to...
Yeah, but that's to do with President Sirisena. But it's not President Sirisena who's running for office. These are joint opposition MPs who are coming across to President Sirisena. And they're right, because they say he's a progressive guy. And they say we have to strengthen him vis-a-vis who? Vis-a-vis Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and the UNP. So they want to strengthen President Sirisena because they see him as the more progressive leader in the government. That's what they say at press conferences. We are coming because we think that dividing the SLFP will only help the UNP, and we want to strengthen President Sirisena's hand. They're not crossing over to the UNP. They're crossing over to President Sirisena, which I think is very, very interesting. Now, whether this will play out at the local authorities election and how it will play out, one doesn't know, because what's really going to happen on the ground? You have the UNP, which is going to contest. Then you have Mahinda Rajapaksa's joint opposition / SLPP, or Pohottua as it's called, the new party, against the government. You can take your pick. If you think the government is doing okay, you vote for the government, i.e. for the UNP. If you think the government is doing badly and you want it to do better, or if you think it's doing badly and you want it to go in 2 years' time, you vote for the main anti-government force, that is the Mahinda Rajapaksa-led bloc. Now, why would anybody vote for the official SLFP? Because if the official SLFP is going to get on the platform and say the government is good, then you might as well vote for the UNP. Why do you want to vote for the SLFP? But if it's going to get on the platform and say the government is bad, then the obvious question is, why are you in the government? Why aren't you with these other guys, the joint opposition? And if they're going to get on the platform and scold Mahinda Rajapaksa, then why do you want to vote for them? You might as well vote for the UNP or the JVP, which scores Mahinda Rajapaksa anyway. So I really don't know what's going to happen to and with the official SLFP, because it seems to be a little schizophrenic. I mean, what is its identity? Is it pro-government or is it anti-government? There's nothing in between.
But we also see a great history behind it, of it always having this problem of identity.
Well, but it was always yes and no, because the SLFP was always the moderate nationalist alternative to the UNP.
Was it a nationalist party all throughout?
Well, nationalist in the sense southern nationalist or majoritarian nationalist or singular nationalist, but moderate. It has always been opposed to the UNP. It has never been with the UNP. For the first time, it's doing two things. One, it's in alliance with the UNP as a junior partner. Two, it's contesting against Mahinda Rajapaksa. It has never done so. In 2015, at two elections, it contested with Mahinda Rajapaksa and under Mahinda Rajapaksa. It lost narrowly in both cases. Now, for the first time, they're running against Mahinda Rajapaksa. They've never done that. Now, Mahinda Rajapaksa is big within the mental universe of the SLFP voter. He's big because he won a war that nobody else could win. And in this country, rightly or wrongly, history is written according to who wins wars. I mean, that's the big deal. It's not who wins elections, it's who wins wars. Because it's a chronicle of a sort of romantic nationalism. So you've got Mahinda Rajapaksa, whose photograph is still in SLFP houses and whose poster is still on the walls. And you've got the SLFP running against him. And at a national level, it's with the UNP. So UNPs are not going to vote for the SLFP, they're going to vote for the UNP. People who don't like the UNP are not going to vote for the SLFP. Why should they vote for the junior partner of the UNP? They're going to vote for the Rajapaksa-led JO/Pohuttuva. The SLFP is going to fall between two stools. Now, you were talking about the morning after, with the bond scam report coming in December 31. There's going to be another morning after, the morning after the election. And the morning after the election, when the dust settles, you will find the UNP, you won't know now whether it will be down to its Ranil base vote, which is around 30%, it's not good enough, or whether as the party, which is the main party of governance, it will get more.
But what is the voter base looking like for the UNP at a grassroots level?
That is incalculable. I mean, it could be down to its 30%.
But we saw a lot of bills being defeated at the grassroots level.
Multipurpose cooperative society elections are an interesting indicator. And the Rajapaksa-led opposition won every one of them. Every one of them. So I don't know whether the same thing will happen in the local elections, but usually the MPCS, that's a multipurpose cooperative society, is very close to the Pradeshia Sabha, because they are both grassroots organizations. And if the MPCS elections are anything to go by, the new formation is going to do very well. Now, if it knocks the SLFP into third place, then it has arrived as the main opposition party. If it defeats the UNP in many or some or most places, then it's really broken through. So you don't know whether which of these things is going to happen or whether either of them are going to happen.
But the national government will not contest together, obviously, at the local government elections.
No, I mean, exactly. Three-way.
But it will be a recipe for disaster if at all they are going to post the SLFP throughout, because we see a lot of support for the SLFP and the UPF at a grassroots level, and it has been the case throughout.
And we don't know whether that's going from the SLFP to the JO, SLPP, because people are looking for something new. I don't know whether they'll see the new party as something new. If they do, there could be a surge, a kind of a protest vote. So it's a very interesting election. It's not a small election. It's usually billed as, it's called Punchi Chande. But this is not small. This is almost a referendum on the government. It's a vote of confidence or no confidence on the performance of the government over the last 3 years. Usually, governments are a lot smarter than this. They have these elections soon after they win the big one. So they win a national election.
But it's not the case this time.
No, this time you're having these elections
after the report.
3 years, not only after the report, 3 years after they've been in office, and more than 2 years after the last election, which was the parliamentary election. So the shine has worn off the government. And what you might have, instead of a cascade effect of a government that has just come in, therefore you vote for the government at the local level because you want money from them.
Right.
But 3 years down the road, you're more likely to get a protest vote. Now, where will that protest vote go? Will it go to the JO or will it go to the JVP?
We'll find out after this short commercial break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching Vantage Point. Well, where will the votes be swinging towards? JVP or JO? But JVP has been that active campaign kind of party where we see, even before the presidential elections 2015, they were the ardent campaigners of against corruption, right? But this time they seem to be opposed to the United National Party, especially because of the bond inquiry. So do you think most of the JVP voters will be anti-UNP this time?
Well, it depends on perception, of course. Now, until, last month before last, the JVP voted with the government. It voted with the government on that quite complex, the Provincial Council bill, which kicked the can of the Provincial Council elections down the road to God knows when, because there were amendments smuggled in at the last moment. The JVP voted with the UNP.
Right.
So, you do not know whether the JVP will be perceived as a consistent anti-UNP opposition, or whether it will be held responsible for having brought the UNP into office in 2015 and having collaborated with the UNP on occasion. What's crucial is whether the election will be primarily an anti-corruption election, in which case the JVP will do well, or whether it will be primarily an anti-government election, that is the performance of the government, in which case the JVP is not the obvious beneficiary, but somebody who's been in government before, and the people compare this government with the earlier one, or the one that will be the next government. Obviously the JVP is not going to be the next government. So you really don't know which way the people will go, whether it's going to be a single issue, that is corruption, or whether it's going to be performance, especially economic performance. In which case it won't be the JVP that the people look to. It'll either be this government or the earlier lot who happen to be in this new opposition formation.
Well, we seem to be on the same subject of appeasing the voters, feeding into their wants and needs. But there's something similar that's happening in the United States as well, where Republican leader and President of the United States is feeding into the Republican voter base by making Jerusalem the recognized city of Israel. What's really going on, and why is there a sudden need to make that official?
7 of the 11 ambassadors of the US to Israel have opposed this, have said this is wrong, this is unwise. The Pope has said this is wrong. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has said it's wrong. In the Security Council, except for the United States and sort of rotating member Israel, everybody else, including Britain and France, have condemned it. Firstly, what's wrong with this? And secondly, why is Trump doing it? What's wrong is this. Yes, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, Stephanie, but that's not the whole of Jerusalem. according to many UN resolutions and the Oslo peace talks, East Jerusalem is to be the capital of the state of Palestine.
Right.
And the other part of Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, is going to be the capital of Egypt. And that is going to be decided as part of a final status peace accord, not unilaterally. But now, Israeli soldiers are snatching Palestinian flags out of the hands of demonstrators. Jerusalem has 350,000 Palestinians. That's as much their home as it is the home of the Jews. So you can't say Jerusalem, simply say Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Part of Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, part of Jerusalem is to be the capital of the independent Palestinian state in the context of a two-state solution.
But it should be ratified by majority of the UN permanent...
Absolutely, because those are UN resolutions, and that's what the UN resolution says.
So just because Donald Trump says it officially doesn't become one.
Yeah, but he's doing it. The world is not recognizing that. The reason he's doing that is, as you quite rightly said, his base, but not all of his base. This is to appease, this is driven by one part of his base. It's not the traditional Republican base.
Right.
It's the evangelical base, where, I mean, and I'm a Catholic.
The businessman.
I'm a Catholic. So, you know, I know what the Bible says, but these evangelicals, they actually think that there's going to be Armageddon. I mean, they actually had a rally where they said, great, we're very happy that Jerusalem has been recognized by President Trump. This is going to lead to war, which is going to lead to the end of the world.
Right.
And then, you know, God is going to turn up or something.
There's a paradox there.
I mean, they really believe this.
Right.
And they're happy that Jerusalem has been recognized by President Trump going against world opinion, because it's going to be the beginning of the end of the world, Armageddon.
Right.
And as a result of which they expect the second coming and so on.
Well, will this be the end of the Trump administration and the end of his reign? Because we even see an impeachment motion was said to be brought against him.
Well, this is certainly the end of, for the time being, or as long as Donald Trump is President of the United States, this is the end of the U.S. being able to play a role in the peace process in the Middle East, because it is now clearly taken a side.
Right.
And it's taken a side that even many in the United States are shocked at. Its allies in the West, Britain, France, the European Union, they are all wondering what's going on and saying, hey, we are not going along with this. This is not what we agreed to, but this is what President Trump is doing. So he's really cancelling himself out as an honest broker in any peace settlement between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
He has been making headlines almost every day, and it's something that we've never had a dull moment about from the time he was elected. So
yeah, I know.
It definitely has stirred a lot of debate. And plus, you can also join this discourse by joining this conversation by sending us an email to newsfirst@maharaja.lk. Well, we've come to the end of the program. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you
for your insights. Well, we'll be joining you next fortnight, and we will definitely talk about a lot more. And stay tuned to TV1.